The human brain is this incredibly complex biological system. Nobody knows quite how it works or even what it is. And so we've always, in the history of trying to understand the brain, we've always reached for the most powerful technology of the time as a metaphor, as a lens to try to understand the brain through. At one point, it was a system of pipes and a kind of plumbing network, and then it became a telephone exchange, and now, of course, it's the computer. So we tend to think of the brain in a computational way, and sometimes forget that the brain as a computer is a metaphor. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there are some similarities. Obviously, this is why this metaphor is powerful. The brain takes in information from the environment, and complicated stuff happens inside, and then we say things, we do things, we perceive things. Computers can at least model or simulate all of these kinds of processes. And we see this around us in AI. I think hopefully intuitive example of a difference. Pretty much all the computers we have around us today have the feature that the hardware, the silicon metal base, is separable from the software. Now, you can run different programs on the same computer, and you can run the same program on different computers, and it'll do the same thing. That's why they're so useful. In a brain, there is no such sharp distinction between the mindware and the wetware. You cannot separate in a brain what it does from what it is. So there are things that brains do which are fundamentally different from the way computers architect it. Whether these things matter, well, that's the really interesting question that people like me and my colleagues are trying to solve. But certainly the brain, in a strict sense, is not a computer. And we're not confused about this in other contexts. We can use computers to simulate, to model, to help us understand. We do this in the weather forecasting. We do this in engineering. And in these contexts, we don't confuse the computer with the thing itself. But in the brain, we sometimes do. And so I think this is where a lot of activity is. The more we look into the brain, the more we realize how different it is. And then the question is, are those the differences that make a difference?